If you were to die tomorrow, would your spouse get half of your NHS pension? Most people think yes, but actually it's only 1/3 of your NHS pension. And that's only the start of all the problems of the 2015 NHS pension scheme. In today's video, I'm going to cover 5 major flaws of the NHS pension scheme that every doctor or nurse working in the NHS should be aware of. The first major problem is your retirement age is not in your control. So in the 2015 NHS pension scheme, the retirement age is linked to the state retirement age. So currently it's about 67, 68, but the government reviews this every year. So when we are heading up closer to retirement, your NHS retirement age could be probably 70, 71 as well. And what this means is for an expat like me is perhaps some of us have plans to retire back in India and things. Also, ours is a very physically demanding job. So to be on our feet when we are 70 and 72 seems like hard work. The next big problem is your spouse gets only 1/3 of your pension. I'll give you an example. Say a doctor earns about 100k, he builds up a retirement pot of about 40k per year, and then if he passes away, the spouse gets only 1/3 of the 40,000. So just about 13,300 pounds. That's equivalent to about just over 1,000 pounds a month. So all of us get used to certain lifestyles. So do you think she can maintain her lifestyle on maybe kids' education, maintaining the house, etc., on just 1,000 pounds a month? Just as a little side note, there is a death in service benefit. So if a person was still working and was to pass away, the wife receives twice the annual salary of the person plus pension. But if the person was retired and then passed away and he's receiving 40,000 pounds of pension, the spouse will receive only 1/3 of the pension. As you can imagine, this is a particularly big problem if the surviving spouse is the female, because most of the females take a step back from their careers for the house and the family. So even if they were working, their pension pot is smaller, and then they receive only 1/3 of the spouse's pension. The next big problem with the NHS pension is limited protection for the children. So I was very shocked when I initially found this out. So if you have dependent children, when you were to pass away, your children get only 1/3 of your pension, and that too only to the age of 23. There's a few exceptions for if the child has a disability over 23 and has no means of earning an income. Let me put this in an example. Oh yes, and if there's more than one child, it's 2/6 divided by how many other children. So it's 2/6 divided by 2, 3, 4 children. How many other children? The maximum is 2/6 or 1/3 if there's only one child. Let me put this in an example. Say the same doctor who was earning 40,000 pounds were to pass away, and he's got 2 dependent children. Each child gets 1/3 or 2/6, so that's equal to 1/3 of the pension. So each child gets about 6,500 pounds for the whole year. So that's about 500 pounds a month. And you can see if that child is still at university or finishing his education, 500, 550 pounds is not going to go very far. And if you're an Indian or Asian watching this, for us, children's education is a big priority. So this is a major flaw in the NHS pension. The next big problem is there's no actual pension pot to pass on. This is where the NHS pension is considerably worse than a private pension policy, where there is no pension pot to pass on. So say if your surviving spouse was to pass away and your dependent children were over 23, there's no pension pot. So you've worked for many years, accumulated a large pension pot, and your dependents, if they're over 23, don't get any of this money. Next big problem is there's no automatic lump sum. So compared to the old 1995 pension scheme where you automatically got a lump sum, this current 2015 scheme, you do not get an automatic lump sum. You can take a lump sum, but that your pension pot size reduces as a result. I personally don't see this as a major problem because the way the 2015 scheme accumulates is much higher than the old 1995 scheme. So the current pension 2015 scheme accrues at 1/54th, and whereas the 1995 scheme is 1/80th. So to put this in layman's terms, say there is a nice big cake and you cut it into 80 pieces. So that is 80 pieces as in the 1995 scheme, whereas in the 2015 scheme you cut it only into 54 slices. So you get larger chunks of money going into each year. So although you don't get an automatic lump sum, you get more money going into your pension. So So technically you can just take the hit and get your lump sum. So here are a few things that you can do to manage the flaws in your NHS pension. First is to take out an adequate life insurance policy. So this can help to cover the gaps with your surviving spousal pension. If you take out an insurance policy when you're fairly fit and young, the premiums won't be so high. And this is especially important if your surviving spouse is dependent on you and you're the breadwinner of the family. Next is consider starting a savings funds for your children education. Obviously they can take a loan, so it's not the end of the world, but if we as a parent want to support a little bit towards your education, maybe consider putting aside a little bit of money towards your education. The third is to plan your retirement and not to be solely dependent on your NHS pension. So if you do not want to work till say 69, 70, 71, consider having a separate savings spot for an early retirement plan, maybe a lifetime ISA, maybe an ISA, maybe a private pension, maybe property. So if you have surplus money, consider having some investments outside your NHS pension. So while this video was stating all the flaws of the NHS pension, please do not misunderstand me. It's still one of the best pension policies in the country, and anybody working in the private sector would do anything to get our NHS pension. I've done a whole video on the pros of the NHS pension, so the pros and the cons, and then you can take a balanced view of the NHS pension. And if this video has given you any food for thought or any aha moments, please share this video with your colleagues or your friends. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.